Press the button.
Yeah.
One time we got like 3 minutes in,
Yeah,
and
right.
Billy's like, "We need to stop."
Oops.
And it's always the best roll
Right,
when you
exactly.
forget.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome back to the Southside Blueprint, your guide for buying, selling, and investing here in Southern Maryland. I'm Justin Teedy, and today I'm joined by Billy Rabbit and Brandon Russell.
Hey, good afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely.
How are we doing today?
Good, good. How are y'all doing?
We're doing all right. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. Appreciate, the opportunity to come in and just sit down and have a chat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Come a long way from homeroom.
Yeah, I know, right?
Class 05, baby.
Yeah.
Class 05.
That was just last year.
Yeah,
Right.
It feels like it. That's funny.
No, that's awesome. So, Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so Brandon Russell, I'm born and raised here in St. Mary's County, came up through St. Mary's County Public Schools, and been involved here in the community for, a number of years now, just doing various different things, trying to get out and serve the community, provide support for different needs. And this year I'm running for county commissioner. And so I ran 4 years ago in 2022 for the same spot, did not win, obviously, so I'm running again. But I decided to run last time and this time because, I wanted to just really take my involvement in the community to the next level and see if I could serve the community in a different way. And after having been involved for a while in different things and hearing how the community is doing either well or not well with various different things, I was like, I think there's an opportunity to make a bigger impact here.
Sure.
So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. And why I'm running in a nutshell. But by day, I guess my 9 to 5, you could say, I'm a government contractor supporting down on Webster Field in St. Inigoes.
Okay.
So like I said, that's my 9 to 5, and I've been doing that for a couple of years now. Prior to that, was in retail management, operations management for the first really big portion of my career. And then, like I said, a couple of years ago, joined as a government contractor and haven't looked back since.
There you go. Very good.
No, that's awesome. So, Brandon, one thing that we've been seeing quite a bit of in St. Mary's County is quite a bit of growth. Mm-hmm. So moving forward, what do you think some of the biggest opportunities we have as a county are?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right. There's been a lot of growth happening. I see a lot of comments online about it. I do a website and social media site called Informed St. Mary's, where I post about land use and development decisions and how people can get involved. And so having done that for the last 4 years or so, I've seen a lot of people, comment on, well, there's too many gas stations, or why can't, we have different size houses and, stuff that's not $600,000 a house, and all the things you read online. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for the commissioners to, get involved with the public, educate them on, different ways that the commissioners do and don't have control over some of these issues. And I think, especially right now with the comprehensive plan being revised, that's pretty huge, right? That only happens once every decade. And so the comp plan basically will direct all of the growth and set a vision for what we want the county to look like. And then once that gets done and approved, the land use department and the commissioners will then work on updating the comprehensive zoning ordinance. And those are the actual laws and regulations that say, hey, this can or cannot be built in a certain area. So I think where growth and development is concerned, those the comp plan and the zoning ordinance are the two biggest opportunities over the next 4 years of a commissioner term that the commissioners will have to really impact, the future of development in the area and what we see.
Sure. We definitely do love our gas stations here in St. Louis County.
Yeah, that's for sure. And luckily, it seems like everyone smartly, I'm sure there's business behind this, has a different offering, right? So you go to one for chicken, and you go to another one for this. So yeah, definitely.
We actually have a podcast episode about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and watch
I'll just
that.
send it to you. Yeah.
We were power ranking convenience stores. But
Okay, so who ranked highest?
Wawa.
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 Yep.
All right.
Wawa.
The OG.
Yep.
But-
So yeah, it was kind of mixed feelings on Sheetz and Rural Farms Chicken. So so there was a toss up on that. So, but no, it's certainly. I mean, and of course, with what we do with our 9 to 5 is that we definitely get involved and hear feedback, good, bad, and different. Regarding growth and housing and where people live and the affordability and things like that. So that's something certainly near and dear to our heart and near and dear to our hearts. And I've participated actually with a couple of those, forums and things like that. And it is very interesting. So yeah, to see the growth and how much projected growth is going to be kind of shuttled into Leonardtown and into the Great Mills, Lexington Park, California area. And then I think I saw somebody posting the other day about some of these town centers and things like that of, I guess some confusion there, but there probably is a little bit of a misconception or maybe a misunderstanding of the county commissioner's responsibility in some of that. But yeah, it is certainly going to be interesting because like I said, it's going to impact over the next 20, 30 years of growth in the county for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's called the 2050 plan. So they're looking forward 25 to 30 years from now. And I think you're right about what the commissioners can and can't do.
Sure.
And a lot of it really needs to come from the public too. Yeah. There were plenty of opportunities to participate in the comprehensive plan process. There's some more coming up actually. Later this month, there's going to be a public hearing before the Planning Commission where people can come and offer their comments about the draft of the comprehensive plan. So that would be a really great time for people to come out. But all of the outreach that the county government did only generated 1% of the local population responding.
Yeah.
So you're talking about our population is 116,000 people. That's 1,500 people.
Sure. Yeah.
And of course, some of those are kids, so they're not gonna fill that out. But that's a real concern too, because you only have such a limited number of people participating. Then on the back end of it, when you're not happy about a decision, it's like, okay, well, we needed you involved earlier in the process. Yeah. So that's another place I think we have some opportunities to find different ways to get people involved and make sure that they know what ways are out there already and even somebody could probably suggest something. I don't know. People have ideas all the time.
Yeah.
It does seem like one of the challenges because it seems like a lot of times when people are finding out about these issues, so to call them, it's after they've already been put into place. So figuring out, I guess, how to better outreach to people, or I guess at the end of the day too, participation's always probably going to be constrained.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one thing I've noticed too through doing Informed St. Mary's is that a lot of these things are really complex processes or ideas or whatever, and you don't have time as like your average everyday person to sit down and really digest all of this material, right? You're going to kids' sports games, you're working, you're doing whatever the responsibility you have as an adult is. And so, part of what I've tried to do is take that, need to digest the material and break it down in a more understandable way and kind of done that process for people so that when I put something on Informed St. Mary's, it's like, okay, this is what's happening. This is why it's happening. And then here's how you can get involved if there's a public hearing or there's some way for you to offer your comments. And people seem to, respond to that. But I think it's a real challenge. Like I said, everything's so complex. It's hard to get people involved with stuff that's really big.
Yeah. I think the one that I went to was in Northern St. Mary's. It was in Charlotte Hall, and I think I was by far the youngest person there. And then on top of that, there was a mix of people that were a little upset over the gas stations, all the gas stations. I think that was right when the sheets had just came up and was finally built over there in that Charlotte Hall, Northern Mechanicsville area. But then, there was a lot of questions that I had that I asked. And, so when I was there, it was, I guess, mostly the facilitators that St. Mary's County has hired, I guess, to help build out the plan and to facilitate the plan. And, a lot of the questions that I had was, it's great, I guess, to think of all this growth and the opportunity and things like that. And of course, there's pros and cons to everything, right? I think Maryland in general has a housing crisis or whatnot.
For sure.
And unfortunately, when you look at St. Mary's County, there's more open, usable space here in St. Mary's County than there is in many of the other counties. Mm-hmm. And so unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, we get a big of the, get a big chunk of that. Mm-hmm. But, my thing is that the housing is, so, they talked about, apartments and townhomes and condos and things like that. But, from a housing standpoint and seeing what we see, a lot of those type of housing, it causes challenges, you know what I mean? From home ownership to, even the condo association problems that we see in like, Prince George's County, where many of those, condos associations aren't even warranted. You can't even really sell a lot of them, unless it's, the pristine buyer. So it just causes a lot of challenges for sure. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and certainly, too, I think it probably would be very wise for people to check you out on Informed St. Mary's to see, at least to get bite-sized pieces of understanding what's going on, for sure.
Yeah, and I think, particularly on the subject of housing, I see a lot of people who say, like, oh, we don't need more housing, stop building housing.
Sure.
The houses you're building are for people that are coming from whoever, wherever, and, people are moving here, yes, but I also think about the friends that I have who one couple I'm friends with are married and have a toddler, and they live with their in-laws because there's nowhere that they can buy that is affordable for them. And so there's a lot of people like that are living multiple generations in the same house. And the other thing too, I've told people before, when you're out driving around, if you're going through a neighborhood, notice how many vehicles are parked at a house. It's not just the two vehicles for the parents and maybe one for the kid anymore. There's multiple vehicles. That means there's a lot of people living in that house. Or I'll see I've been noticing a lot more campers. That you can obviously tell somebody's living in a camper as like an ADU or something. So anyway, when you start to notice those things, you do see that there is a real need for housing just for the people who already live here.
Sure. Yeah. And I think too, and that was another question that I had was, in this plan, of course, and I know it's a plan that's kind of directed towards growth and figuring out where to funnel growth and things like that for the county to help support it. But also too, there's a lot of neighborhoods in St. Mary's County that have challenges with septic systems. A lot of the pretty populated communities that we have throughout St. Mary's County, they have failed septic issues. There's nowhere for replacements. They're having to move over to holding tanks and things like that. So that's impacting affordability and you know what I mean? So unfortunately, it's just continuing to drive prices, upward. And so it is certainly something that I think the county commissioners need to be very focused on because, certainly I think the next 10 to 20, 30 years or so is going to be pivotal on these things because of the fact that a lot of these houses that are having these failed septic systems in these neighborhoods are now 60, 70 years old. Yeah.
And I actually live in one of those neighborhoods. I live down near St. Clement Shores.
Okay, sure, yeah.
And so that neighborhood, has definitely experienced those issues, has gone through water and sewer upgrades. Metcom is still, planning to do some work down there. And I hear about Golden Beach a lot. And so that's definitely a real issue. And I think in particular with older neighborhoods, older neighborhoods like St. Clement Shores, Golden Beach, Town Creek, that do have these smaller, quote unquote starter homes, it's going to be really important to make sure that housing inventory remains viable. And doesn't just, decay and fall into disrepair or otherwise become unusable because of a septic issue or something, because, to your point, it's going to affect the local housing market and the prices and et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
No, and that's one thing that we talk about a lot too, because when you go and look through homes, it seems like a lot of the oldest homes are around like 50s, 60s. So we're going to get to a point here shortly where, the average home age is, getting up there quite a bit just because we haven't seen nearly as much development as of late here.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to ask Brandon, so we asked kind of about the biggest opportunities for the county, and we kind of touched on this as well, but what do you feel like the biggest challenges the county faces as a whole are?
Yeah, I definitely think it's, things related to money, right? It's the budget, it's taxes, it's making sure that people can afford to live here. The county has struggles on that just in and of itself. Every year, I watch the budget process as the commissioners go through it, and everybody comes forward, everybody being the different departments and agencies, comes forward with what they think they need in order to deliver services for the people of the county, right? And then it's up to the commissioners to try to figure out, well, what can we or can't we fund, and how do we live within our means, essentially. And then you have, the situation at the state, which is a whole other ball game. We're talking about structural budget deficits, and the last few years have seen the state government push down costs to the counties, which means that the county has to pick up the tab for various different things, and somehow find a way to do that. And so, it seems to me like that is always going to be the biggest challenge, is trying to figure out what do we prioritize with the taxpayers' money in order to deliver effective and efficient services that meet the needs of people who live here. So, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and unfortunately, everything costs money.
Yeah. Nothing is free. Somebody is paying for it somewhere.
Right. And that's probably the hardest part, is because we want the new, we want the upgraded, we want the updated and things like that. But then unfortunately, it costs money to do those things. And so it is certainly a challenge for sure. And something like you said, that the whole entire state is facing.
Yeah.
And it's hard to please, everybody. Unfortunately, there's got to be sometimes a winner or loser, or at least a compromise, on both sides. And sometimes I think that's tough. So.
Yeah, and I think it's going to take some inventive thinking and just approaching things from a different perspective, or a different way to kind of solve some of these issues, because it's not just as simple as, we need to raise taxes, right? Because then you're telling people they need to pay more money, and it's like, well, if I'm investing in something, I want to know what I'm getting out of it,
Sure.
right? So that's a hard conversation to have. So we need to be looking for different ways to gain revenue for the county that is not placing additional burden on the people who already live here, and being able to maintain what we have as far as services, and also make sure that as new development is coming in, whether it's residential or commercial, that we are making sure that the infrastructure keeps up, and that people continue to get what they need.
Sure.
Sure. And some of the issues with money, so to speak, are kind of larger scale issues, but how much of it do you think can be addressed and at least initiated at the county level?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, well, first of all, the county has to react to what is happening elsewhere. So whether that's at the state, which is most of probably the impact, or the federal level, whatever impact that may be. But I think, for the commissioners themselves, when they're making decisions, and certainly, what I intend to do when I'm a commissioner and trying to make decisions about this stuff, is, look at where are we putting money that is most effective, and where are we putting money that is not effective, and what do we need to change in the areas that are not as effective. And then also, like I said, looking for different sources of revenue, trying to make sure that we're broadening our local economy. A lot of people talk about the county relying a lot on the base, which we do, and it does bring a lot to our area. But the federal workforce has faced reductions, and so we've been insulated, I think, to a degree from that down here, but we don't know that we will always be insulated from that. Things change. So, looking to see, are we diversifying our economy in the right ways so that we can have that additional revenue. And I think, too, also, looking at what we're charging people for using services. One thing that I heard some chatter about this year was recreation and parks fees going up. And, it's a modest increase, like a buck or two across some things. But for some people, that's a big dent into their budget if they're, really on a shoestring budget.
Sure.
And so anyway, just trying to find, that right balance and make sure that the services that are being offered are actually able to be used and available because people can afford to do so.
Sure.
Sure. And as far as growing the economy grows, the base obviously does play a pretty big part. What are some other avenues that, could be explored to kind of grow the local economy?
Yeah. I think that, what we've been doing well in the county as far as economic development is looking for industries that kind of naturally partner with the base, right? So things like drones and, technologies like that are based at the airport. But I also think we have an opportunity to look into more defense adjacent industries. So these are things like, expanding different IT type work and things that could support the drone activity and stuff like that. The more I'm struggling for words here. It's like you want to find something that's a defense adjacent industry that's going to support the things that tie directly into the base, like the drones. So again, the IT stuff, we want to make sure that folks who may work in trades have the availability to learn how to work on things like drones and stuff like that. So we're kind of still supporting the base, but it's funneled down a little bit so that if the base were to leave, does the support for the base adjacent or military adjacent company, does that support dry up because the company goes out of business?
Yeah. So I'm almost really looking for different industries that complement what we're already doing.
Yeah, complement's a great word. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I think we do see some of that. I mean, you know what I mean? But I certainly agree. I mean, there's certainly a huge avenue where I feel like we could do that. And probably, too, I mean, almost trying to find something that maybe St. Mary's County can lead in. I mean, I think we do a well job of complementing different industries, or we're good at, kind of falling in line. But I think, is there an opportunity for maybe us to find something to lead on, or at least to be maybe the leaders in the state or whatever on certain things or whatever like that for maybe technology or things like that,
Yeah, and I do think too, there's opportunity for economic development in kind of looking at what the community says they want, right? So you hear a lot about, well, there's nothing for people to do here. We want recreational or entertainment type opportunities. So, how can we attract a business here that may provide something in that category? And that is also a business that's going to pay, a livable wage so people can afford to live here if they're working at that business. Because, a lot of what I see now is the folks who work on the base, and I certainly know this because I'm a base contractor, make a higher wage than somebody who's working in what I call the service industry. So that, could be police, teachers, people working retail where I used to work. Early in my career, I started as a retail cashier and then, made it up to management and was in management for about 8 or 10 years. And still, people in management and retail struggle to afford cost of living here. So, there's a real opportunity to kind of expand that quote unquote service industry sector and attract businesses that are going to be paying, again, a wage that people can make and afford to actually live here.
Something it's kind of something to touch on what you just said, Brandon, was so when I was part of that, or when I went to one of the forums for the growth, the 2050 growth, one of the things that a lady there, I would say a lady that's been in the county for quite some time or whatever, and seen the county evolve quite heavily.
Yeah.
One of the things that she kept telling the moderator there, or one of the ladies that was working for this third party for the county, she kept saying, well, we need restaurants. And it was almost as if she was saying well, instead of putting gas stations, and that was actually her word, instead of putting gas stations, we need restaurants. We don't have any restaurants in the northern part of the county.
Yeah. And
so it was kind of interesting, but it was kind of an aha moment for me, is that, what can the county do to incentivize, retailers or some of these, jobs or industries, whatever, to come here too. And like I was saying, I think, being kind of a leader in that aspect or whatever, asking the community what they want or what they need or whatever, and then going out and trying to draw or to attract some of these businesses down here. I think that would be, that would be very good. So very interesting concept.
Yeah. And I mean, especially when you're talking about attracting businesses, if you're looking at something that's a corporate, large chain business, like, any chain restaurant or any chain gas station, convenience store, they have plenty of people that work for them that do market studies and figure out, like, is this a good investment to build here? So like they know usually that the business is going to be there to support it, but the commissioners can't really affect that process, right? You can't go over to Sheetz or Royal Farms and be like, hey, we need you to build a store here. But what we can do is we can look for ways to support people who are local and want to start a business that may be in the entertainment, or recreation type sector. And how can we support those types of small businesses that are going to start and grow here, and then, hire people that are going to live here. So
For
sure. I think a bowling alley would be a good add.
Oh, that's one I hear all the time. Ever since the one in the park closed, which apparently closed after I even thought it closed. So, bowling alley all the time. People seem to really want a Dave and Buster's down here, and I feel like that's kind of not ever going to happen.
Right.
Because, the market share or the amount of people they need is probably really huge. But anyway,
Yeah. No, and it's, if you bring a bowling alley, then it's up to the community to help go and support that too.
That's true.
So I mean, it takes two sides of that. I mean, we can help promote any business to come and go, but if the community doesn't go and support them, it's tough. It's tough to be a small business owner. So
yeah. So Brandon, one of the things I wanted to ask you was just what are some of your favorite things about the county? I know you born and raised here. What parts of the county do you like the most?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if there's any one part that I like more than another, but I will tell you, like, one thing that I really enjoy about St. Mary's County is that, there are places here that you can go to that are like pretty much another world, right? Sure. So, one place that I hear a lot of people talk about and that I've gone to myself is St. Mary's River State Park.
Sure.
You go there and you hike the trails, and it's around the lake, and it's pretty secluded when you get back in there, and it really does seem like another world. You can also drive down any back road really in like 7th District and feel like you're in another world because it's so far removed from like 235 and all the major population centers, and just the rural nature and being able to like look across miles of open fields or across the water and stuff like that. It can be really picturesque. And another thing I really like about the county is the amount of history that we have here.
Sure.
And so for me, it's always a struggle to hear, well, there's nothing to do here because, like, kind of as a nerd, I like history stuff. So I'm like, okay, like literally you could throw a stone and find something history related. But I really enjoy that. And in fact, later this year, I'm planning to go down to St. Mary's City. They're having, I don't know, like maybe 4 or 5 of these events where you can actually sign up and like be an archaeologist for a day and go like dig on the fort site and help them find stuff. And that seems really interesting. So I'm going to go dig in the dirt sometime in like September or October and see what I can turn up. But yeah, I mean, they're definitely, it's a very special place to be in St. Mary's County. I don't know that I've ever visited anywhere else where I've heard people who are from there or and people who like have moved there all say like, oh, we love this place and we want to, live here for the rest of our lives. Like, I feel like that's pretty unique to our area.
Yeah. I think people that have lived here for a while to kind of take it for granted, all the things that it really does have to offer.
Well, and I don't know about you, but I remember in high school, I was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. Like there's nothing to do here. I want to get out of here. And now look where I am.
Right.
So,
Here you are. Exactly.
No, awesome. Well, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No. Yeah, Brandon?
Well, I definitely appreciate the conversation today. I think it's been really good. And, we've touched on a lot of issues. I guess I would just add that, I'm running for office this year because I want to make sure that we have a community centered perspective and voice on the Board of County Commissioners. I want to find ways that we can increase community participation and kind of bridge that gap between the county government and the community and people being involved. And, I kind of get the sense that there's, a lot of distrust out there in government, really, at any level,
Sure.
just government in general as a concept. And I think that, the place we can have the most impact on kind of turning that around and making it more positive is here at the local level, because, you're not going to see necessarily somebody representing you in state government, and probably definitely not the federal government, in like a grocery store or at the gas station pumping gas or something. Your local elected officials you can run into anytime, anywhere, and they should be really accessible to the community in that way. So that's why I'm running, is to bring, like I said, that community-centered voice to the table. And I would invite anybody who, has questions about my campaign or wants to talk about really any topic on their mind, please look me up online, votebrandonrussell.com. My contact information is there, phone number, email. People can reach out and just, let's have a chat.
Absolutely. And then Inform St. Mary's, that's on what platform are you on?
So Inform St. Mary's is on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and informstmarys.com. So you can check it out in those places. And I'm kind of trying to keep up with it as I run for commissioner. It's been a little bit tough, but I still try to do what I can to get stuff out, especially if it's something important. So if you're interested in coming and talking about the comprehensive plan later this month, check out Inform St. Mary's. I'll put the information on there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No, thank you for joining us today, Brandon. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Southside Blueprint. We'll see you next time.